What's the pettiest thing you've ever done to prove a point? Story 1. If I decide to stare, it's usually with a, yeah, what the hell are you going to do about it? Look, I'm about 6'7", so even when I'm just trying to be friendly, i.e. not farting on a stranger kid's head, and meeting a family member's or friend's kid for the first time, I've noticed they get very hide between their mother's legs, intimidated on sight if I'm not sitting down. So it's not hard for me to silence intimidate a child, especially when I'm trying to. However, a few times I've been called out. One time I was pretty drunk with a friend at a Target buying Risk, and no, we never finished playing the whole game. This little Mexican 5 to 7-year-old with a mohawk was being an insufferable little shit in the action figure section. I heard him from like 5 aisles over, and it was like nails on a chalkboard. I tell my friend, I'm gonna fart on this kid's head. Watch and learn. I saunter on over to the aisle in question and see the vile little prick calling his mom an idiot for not buying him a huge G.I. Joe the movie vehicle, which pissed me off even more considering how awful that movie was. I already bought that one for you and you broke it by throwing it down the stairs. Shut up. I need it. It's the only one I don't have now. The mother was younger than me, I'm mid-20s, and gave a defeated look. I don't have enough money right now. You are an idiot and continued to just berate and publicly shame this woman? At the time, I was on a strict Chipotle carnitas burrito diet, and while I was watching all this, my stomach gave me an initial warning gurgle. Very courteous stomach, telling me I was about an hour away from punishing the toilet. Serendipity. Destiny. I inch a bit closer to my prey, inspecting some wrestling toys and pondering the weird homoeroticness of the whole sport in general. The kid shouts, "I hate you!" The mom rolls her eyes and turns her back to the kid to ignore him. And could you believe it, the kid gets on his hands and knees and starts taking the toy out of the box. It's go time. I position my back towards him and at this point am like 2 feet away from him. His head is down, getting frustrated with those goddamn twisty tie things, and I go for the kill. I bend down to reach for the one of the toys on the lower shelf. At this point, my ass is inches away from this kid's head. Now, generally speaking, the best way to go about this is to act casual, drop your belly bomb, then walk away after a few seconds like nothing is out of the ordinary. I usually go one aisle over and listen to the kid's reaction and delight. However, today I couldn't help myself. I have my head tilted back looking at this kid out of the corner of my eye to ensure accuracy. I'm so close that from a distance it looks like I'm about to sit on him. My friend sees this happening and can no longer contain himself. He's covering his mouth, but his hee-haw hyperventilating donkey chortle is fairly audible over the late 90s pop muzak playing on the loudspeakers. The kid immediately looks up towards the laughter, but can't help but notice there is an ass now directly in his face. Now, I'm trying not to laugh, but also panicking as I just made eye contact with him. He furrows his brow and I look over in the mother's direction, still back towards us. I relish in the moment and the look on this child's confused and naive face. The initial blast was mighty and boisterous. I swear I saw his hair blowing in the wind, so to speak. If I wasn't wearing jeans, I think it could have probably blown over an empty soda can. I would call it a very fun fart. A++ would buy again. However, what immediately followed that out the chamber was truly horrifying. The fart's implication changed without notice and swiftly. It went from a joyous, dry air horn squeal to a nefarious, hissing mephitis. I think the little moppet noticed the hateful metamorphosis before even I did because he wrenched his neck violently trying to get away from the personified evil being fumigated into his soul. Because of his positioning, hovering over the toy, hands and knee, it was all in vain as the only way out was forward, and forward would mean certain death. I had positioned myself well on the higher ground, free to escape or relent at any time, and him, poor and immobilized, biding his time until the cruel attack was over. Obviously, this child needed to reread Sun Tzu. In total, it lasted about 4 seconds, but for that kid, it must have seemed like time was frozen. The long-term severe brain damage which he no doubt suffered only added to that effect. When I finished with my business, i.e. forcing a little boy to huff my farts, There was a silent, pregnant pause. The kid was clearly shocked and stunned. No one had ever stood up to this dwarf sociopath in his whole life. I had taken the words out of his mouth and filled it with fart. I make my move first, picking up the toy I was reaching for off the low shelf, take a few steps forward and stare at it for a few seconds. On 2 alligator, the only thing the kid could manage to do was burst into tears. My friend senses danger, the jig is up, and his head darts for cover. The mom turns around to see her kid with an open toy crying on the floor and me minding my own business. She walks up to him and asks what's wrong, but the kid can't speak. All he gets out is, "Ba-wah-wah-wah, fart ba-wah-wah." It took every fiber in my body not to laugh. I put the toy back on a middle shelf, turn around, give a final nonchalant look-see, and then begin to take my exit. Sensing that his assailant was getting away scot-free, he somehow managed to compose himself for a moment. He shouts, "He farted on me!" I could feel him pointing at me, but I continued to act like I was just browsing. I was almost around the corner when the mom goes, "Excuse me, sir, sir." I turn around nonplussed. Who? Me?" While pointing to myself. "Yes, did you just fart on my son?" Weighing my options, I played dumb. "What? I mean, I did fart." "On my son?" "Well, technically speaking, what is on? Why did you fart on my son?" At this point, the little kid has the look of schadenfreude on his face, happy to see me in trouble. I turn my attention to the little kid and stare at him. Because the whole store could hear him being a little rotten asshole to his mother, so I thought I'd come over here and treat him like one. The mom looks at me, her son, and the scattered G.I. Joe Bossy wrappers box on the floor. The mom is puzzled as to what to do and says, Just go." That's my cue. I turn around, walk away with a little extra step. I look up to see the black orb of security cameras and all the stories on Reddit about unjustly having to register as a sex offender flash before my eyes. As soon as I turn the corner, I book it outside as fast as I can while dialing my friend. Like a true friend, he is right out front with the engine running and Risk in the trunk. We laugh on the car ride back about the whole scene. With a slight hint of seriousness in his tone, my friend asks me, "Do you do that a lot?" Not that much. Like once every 6 months or so." We both knew I was lying. We got to our other friend's house, played Risk until 4 in the morning while drinking scotch. Overall, I would say it was a pretty good day. Story 2. When I was in 6th grade, my small-town school track team did very well and was allowed to compete in the state finals. My event was the 200-meter dash, and while I did okay against the other small towns we normally faced, I had no chance at state. This was pretty much the case for most of us, so we mostly goofed off and explored the massive arena and whatever. I wasn't allowed soda at home, but somebody bought me a huge Coke, and I thought it was pretty great. Came time for me to run my race. Well, actually my heat in the preliminaries, as this thing was so big time that they actually had more runners than would fit on the track at once. First time I'd ever seen that. Coach tells me to do my best and have fun. Nobody expects much, it's just an honor to be there. I line up on this beautiful, wide cinder track with maybe 15 lanes. I was used to 8. And an unbelievable crowd watching. Big grandstands full of people, all new to me. I get kind of excited about the whole thing. So we all set our feet in the blocks, crouch down and tense up, waiting for the shot from the starter pistol. Meanwhile, a hush settles over the crowd. We're on edge, waiting for the bang. When the starter fires, I take this huge leap forward like I'm going to sprint the whole 200 meters, which is pretty much what people who are good at it do, but not my usual approach. This massive physical effort simultaneously propels the most violent, loudest fart of my life out my preteen stinkhole. Most of the crowd hasn't trained to the peak physical level that I have, so their reaction to the pistol shot is a tiny bit slower. The effect is that after the bang, but before anyone makes a single sound, my fart echoes through the arena with unbelievable clarity and tone. I manage a few strides just out of instinct before realization of what's happening starts to set in. I glance over at the crowd, and in that split second, I can just see it on every face. They know. They all know. And they are all looking right at me. This starts me laughing super hard while also running as hard as I ever have. And what's my body's reaction to that unusual combination? Yep, fart a lot more. However, I am now taking strides pretty rapidly, so instead of one big blast, I'm ripping a little one with each step. I can't even think of what letters could represent the sound. If you can imagine a rapid series of very brief, very loud farts, that's pretty much it. This whole situation has only taken like 10 seconds to develop. We aren't even halfway done yet, and I've farted about 15 times. I literally could not continue from laughing so damn hard. I stumbled to a hunched over stop right there in the middle of the fanciest arena I've ever been to, giggling like the farting idiot I am. I then realized that nobody is rushing past me, which come to think of it should have happened by this time in the race regardless of the fart situation. I turn around and every one of the other runners is either lying on the ground or crouched over laughing just as hard as I am. Literally crying, laughing. Apparently, my fart-propelled lunge off the line had taken most of them out, and the rest succumbed to my staccato encore presentation. And that's the story of how an entire heat was eliminated from the 200-meter state finals, with no one completing the event, which I was told had never happened before in the history of state finals. I escaped amazingly unscathed, as the tiny handful of people from my school were all setting up for their own events and not watching. There were rumors of a second farter, and basically they let me walk away. I hid in the school bus till we left, and my coach was the only person to ever speak to me about it. He didn't laugh, but he also didn't yell at me. Story 3. Let me tell you, I made a huge mistake this evening. My girlfriend, who let me just say is only my second girlfriend ever, invited me to dinner with her parents. Naturally, I was nervous and a bit overwhelmed, but I knew it was important to make a good impression. The evening started off well enough. Everyone was polite, and I was doing my best to keep things friendly and lighthearted. Then an idea popped into my head. I thought it might be funny to do a little comedic bit, to show them that I'm amusing and have a sense of humor. When baked potatoes were served, I got the idea to pretend I didn't know what potatoes were. I figured it would be funny and might break the ice. Well, let me tell you, it completely backfired. When the potato landed on my plate, I put on an expression of confusion and curiosity. I acted like I was utterly perplexed by the sight of it. They noticed and seemed a little puzzled, but no one said anything at first, so I asked, "This looks interesting. What is it?" The mother replied, "It's a baked potato." I nodded, pretending to be fascinated. "Oh, a baked... What is it again?" "A potato," she repeated, looking even more confused. I said, "A potato? Oh, interesting. I've never heard of that before. It looks good." At this point, they didn't realize I was joking. Instead, they genuinely thought I didn't know what a potato was. When I saw their reaction, I panicked. I couldn't admit it was a bad joke, so I decided to commit to the act, no matter how ridiculous it was. They started asking me very skeptically if I truly didn't know what a potato was. I doubled down, insisting I had never heard of or seen a potato in my life. This went on for a while, and my girlfriend became visibly uncomfortable. The more I insisted, the more suspicious her parents became. Her father, in particular, started to get irritated. Finally, he said something like, "All right, enough. Just admit you're messing with us." I replied, "Sir, I promise I've never heard of a potato before tonight. I don't know what to tell you." That's when things started to unravel. Her father became visibly upset, and to make things worse, I decided to take a bite of the potato. Trying to keep up the act, I made a strange noise and said, "This tastes unusual." That was the breaking point. The father started raising his voice, asking me what on earth I was doing. The mother kept repeating, "What is happening?" Meanwhile, my girlfriend got up and left the room entirely. Finally, her father told me to leave. I tried to explain that it was irrational to be upset just because I didn't know what a potato was, but that didn't go over well. Now, I'm in a mess. I've been texting my girlfriend, sticking to the story that I genuinely don't know what a potato is. I'm hoping they'll eventually believe me, but honestly, I think this might be the end of our relationship. Let me tell you, if I could go back in time, I'd rethink this entire plan.